the bill today, the House Joint Resolution that the Senate is supporting, supports the full and fair exoneration of the late, great Theodore Fulton Stevens. It denounces the decision also to reverse the suspensions of the federal prosecutors who intentionally withheld evidence from the defense of Senator Stevens. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Ted Stevens served our state honorably from December 24th, 1968 until January 3rd, 2009. So much of what we are as a state, in fact, statehood itself, would not have been possible for this single man who was orphaned and taken in by his aunt and uncle in California, made his way up to serve as a student at Harvard, remarkably, got his law degree, came to Alaska, like many of our families did, with hopes and dreams, and decided to take up a life of public service. He served as the majority leader over in the other body, also served in the Department of Interior and wore many hats, but all of them were in public service in his life. He was never a man of wealth, but he was a man that was very wealthy in knowledge and in his love for this state. He was the President Pro Tem of the United States Senate from 2003 to 2007, and he was President Pro Tem Emeritus from the United States Senate from 2007 to 2009. I mentioned earlier he served in the Alaska House of Representatives from 1965 to 68. Never in this body, Mr. President, but served us. As we know, tragic events unfolded wherein our United States Senator was indicted on July 29th of 2008, allegedly failing to disclose a gift, the value of renovations to his cabin in Girdwood. Senator Stevens demanded not to delay, but rather to move up the trial date during his election period, pleading not guilty before the district court and Judge Emmett G. Sullivan in the District of Columbia. And that date was July 31st, 2008. We all know it was right during an election cycle. Senator Stevens, being a very honorable man, one who had also served our country in Korea, a man of pride, felt that it was important that the voters get a chance to hear all the evidence and to know that he was not guilty. Before that election. Many attorneys advised him to wait, to delay that trial, and he refused to do that, believing his innocence would prevail. Evidence presented at the trial showed that Senator Stevens paid the bills for the work that was presented to him. Sadly, he was found guilty, but it was uncovered in a great travesty, one of the greatest travesties of justice as this lawyer has ever read in her life. There's another senator that's going to speak today about a book that's been written on this, but remarkably, United States Attorney General Eric Holder uncovered and asked the verdict to be set aside after a discovery that federal prosecutors worked together to unlawfully and calculatingly withhold critical exonerating evidence that would have allowed Senator Stevens to be free. And to show the members of the jury of his peers, the truth of his innocence. So on April 7, 2009, United States District Judge Sullivan, very strongly, remarkable words, Mr. President, as he came forward in this decision. He was saddened, he had tears, could not believe what had played out in his courtroom, could not believe that federal prosecutors and investigators in the Federal Bureau of Investigation had calculatedly entered into this plan. He granted a motion filed by the United States to set aside the verdict, to dismiss the indictment against Ted Stevens, and the dismissal order included this statement, if I might read, Mr. President.
No objection.
There was never a judgment of conviction in this case. The jury's verdict is being set aside and has no legal effect. Judge Sullivan appointed a special counsel at that moment to investigate the prosecutors, and people like myself and other Alaskans watched this play out and felt great relief. Corruption is a very, very serious thing, and we are proud of the FBI agents and proud of special prosecutors that do prosecute government officials that serve in these halls and other halls and would ever use their seats illegally. We're very proud of that. That's an important part. There are countries on this earth right now where corruption is a way of life. A handshake and dollar bills, hundreds of dollars of bills get you around in a government, and that's an awful thing. But corruption can go the other way, and we saw a mockery of our justice system play out. So we were thrilled to see this investigation come forward. The investigation came out and revealed, in fact, gross injustice had taken place that seriously damaged the testimony, the credibility of government witnesses. Evidence was calculatingly withheld, all of what I have mentioned. So on May 23rd, 2012, United States Associate Deputy Attorney General Scott N. Schools issued a final decision approving disciplinary action proposed by Kevin Olson, who's the chief of the Professional Misconduct Review Unit. He recommended that Joseph Bettini, Joe Bettini being a graduate of Bartlett High School here in the state of Alaska, be suspended for a mere 45 days. Mr. President, I do not believe that that was long enough. I believe his law license should have been removed. He's licensed here in the state of Alaska. This resolution makes mention of that. I think that's something that should be taken up by the Alaska Bar Association. But it was a mere 45 days, and that would have sent at least a message that what he did to United States Senator Ted Stevens, what he did to the citizens of this country and the citizens of Alaska was wrong, and that James Gecke be suspended for a mere 15 days. What happened later was that those suspensions were withheld. Those two gentlemen have never served a single day of those two sentences that were handed out, and I think that's a travesty. That's what this resolution says today here in the Senate. We get a chance to push a button. It's not much when you consider the great life of a man like Ted Stevens and what he did and what his family sacrificed. And I stand here honoring his daughters, his sons, his wife, both his late wife, Anne, and his current widow, Catherine, who stood beside him and sacrificed every day of their life as well, going to school. Beside him, the kids in Washington, D.C., relocating their lives to watch that great man fall like a giant redwood in a forest was unbelievable. And to think that it was calculated and done in such a corrupt manner, and that the two people who were involved, after a fair and full analysis and investigation, have never served a single day and are still practicing law is outrageous. And so I'd urge members' support today. Parts of it, again, just remind us the honor of Ted Stevens, what he did to build this great state, what he did to serve in these halls, but more importantly, remind us the history of what happened in this case and hopes that it never happens again to a single American. Never mind that he was a United States Senator. If this can happen to a United States Senator, what is happening to other Americans who don't have the dollars to defend themselves? And that is the biggest travesty, is that it makes all of us question what is happening in our system of justice that we hold so dear. So I'd urge members' support.